My mother-in-law constantly chose my husband's ex over me, and even invited her to family dinner. So I finally exposed everything and revealed the truth. I should have known something was wrong the first time my mother-in-law invited my husband's ex-girlfriend to our engagement party, not as an ordinary guest, as a co-host. At the time, I tried to tell myself she was just one of those painfully inclusive people who could not stand to hurt anyone's feelings. You know the type. The kind of person who invites the dentist to family gatherings and insists the mailman stay for dinner because leaving anyone out feels cruel. My husband told me it was nothing. He said his mother simply had a hard time letting people go. He said it with such calm certainty that I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him. We had been dating for 2 years, and I loved him deeply. So I convinced myself this was just a strange family habit. Some families were loud, some families were quiet. His family apparently kept ex-girlfriends around like houseplants. I married him anyway. I married him despite that enormous red flag waving directly in front of my face, practically slapping me with its bright red fabric. The engagement party itself should have been my wake-up call. His ex stood at the entrance beside my mother-in-law, greeting guests as if the two of them were hosting a charity gala together. She wore a dress that looked remarkably similar to mine. Same shade of blue, same style. My mother-in-law later claimed it was just a funny coincidence. The ex knew details about the party that even I had not known. She knew what hors d'oeuvres were being served. She knew what time the photographer would arrive. When I asked my husband about it, he shrugged and said his mother had probably just needed help with the planning. Help from his ex-girlfriend for our engagement party. The logic was so backward it gave me whiplash. After that, her name kept coming up during family dinners. At first, the mentions seemed casual. Oh, she used to make this dish for us. She always knew how to arrange flowers so beautifully. It sounded innocent enough. It was not innocent. It was so very far from innocent. Within the first 6 months of our marriage, I realized my mother-in-law had never actually moved on from her son's previous relationship. She talked about his ex as though she were a daughter who had died tragically in some beautiful, poetic way, not a girlfriend who had broken up with him more than 5 years earlier, because from what I understood, they simply were not compatible long-term. I tried talking to my husband about it during those early months, but he always looked at me with confused eyes and said he had not noticed. His mother mentioned his ex constantly, and he genuinely did not see it as a problem. That was when I started to understand that this had been normalized for him for most of his life. The dinner invitations began around month 7 of our marriage. They were surprise dinners where his ex just happened to be there too. My mother-in-law would act shocked every time. She would claim she had completely forgotten she had invited both of us. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I completely spaced. But you're both here now, so let's just make the best of it. My husband would squeeze my hand under the table, but he never actually confronted his mother about the pattern. The comparison started subtly. She used to fold the napkins this way. She knew exactly how I liked my tea. Then they became less subtle. She was always so good with children. Do you like children, Bryn? My mother-in-law asked me that at a family barbecue in front of about 20 relatives. Another time she said she could cook a roast that would make you cry. Can you cook a roast, Bryn? I could, actually. But after that comment, I never cooked one for my mother-in-law. I started keeping a mental tally, and by the end of the first year, I had been compared to this woman constantly. I told my best friend about it during a wine night, and she asked me why I was still going to family dinners. That was a good question. My husband kept insisting that his mother would come around. He kept saying she just needed time to adjust. Time to adjust to what, exactly? Her son being happy. Her son being married to someone who was not her chosen candidate. I slowly realized my husband's passivity was not kindness. It was not patience. It was cowardice. Plain and simple, cowardice. He was terrified of confronting his mother. Terrified of setting boundaries, terrified of choosing me over her feelings. Every time I brought it up, he said things like, "She's just set in her ways," or "That's just how she is," or my personal favorite, "She means well." She did not mean well. Nobody who means well invites their son's ex-girlfriend to family events specifically to make his current wife uncomfortable. Nobody who means well spends an entire dinner listing all the ways the ex was superior. Nobody who means well does any of this. But my husband had been trained since childhood to accept his mother's behavior, excuse it, and enable it. He had spent his entire life walking on eggshells around her moods, and he had gotten so good at it that he did not even realize he was doing it anymore. The wedding seating arrangement should have been my breaking point. It really should have been. We had carefully planned the family table. Immediate family only. My parents, his parents, my maid of honor, who was my sister, his best man, who was his brother, 6 people. It was the perfect number for a round table, elegant and intimate. The morning of the wedding, during rehearsal, I found his ex sitting at our family table, chatting with my mother-in-law as if they were old friends catching up over brunch. She was laughing at something my mother-in-law had said. She touched her arm affectionately. She looked completely at home at my wedding rehearsal. When I questioned it, I tried to keep my voice calm and level, because I was already stressed about 17 other wedding details. My mother-in-law looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Oh, didn't I tell you I invited her because she's practically family? She's been part of our lives for so long it would feel wrong not to include her in this special day." This special day. My special day. My wedding. And she had invited my husband's ex-girlfriend to sit at the family table as if she were the bride's long-lost sister. I had to physically remove a name card at my own wedding. My hands were shaking with anger, frustration, and disbelief. My maid of honor, my sister, has never minced words in her life. She took one look at my face and marched straight over to my mother-in-law. She is not sitting here. She is not sitting anywhere near the family tables. Actually, why is she even here? This is bizarre. My mother-in-law clutched her pearls. Literally clutched them. Then she said she was only trying to be inclusive. My sister told her there was a difference between being inclusive and being inappropriate. And this was firmly in the inappropriate category. My husband apologized profusely afterward, but he had done absolutely nothing to prevent it from happening in the first place. He had not called his mother beforehand to confirm the guest list. He had not questioned why an ex-girlfriend would be at the family table. He had not stood up to his mother or told her she had crossed a line. He just apologized after the fact and expected that to be enough. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But I was getting married in 6 hours, and I did not have time to process the full scope of how dysfunctional this family dynamic actually was. Year 2 of marriage brought more of the same, only amplified. The ex showed up at my cousin's baby shower carrying a gift that was somehow more expensive and more thoughtful than mine. She appeared at my husband's birthday party with a cake she had baked herself, complete with intricate frosting decorations that spelled out inside jokes I did not understand. She was there at Christmas, sitting by the fireplace like she belonged there, opening presents my mother-in-law had bought specifically for her. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, gift cards to places I knew for a fact my mother-in-law had never bought anything from for me. My sister-in-law pulled me aside at that Christmas gathering and told me she thought the entire situation was absolutely insane. She said she had never seen her mother act this way about anyone else, not even her own ex-boyfriends. When my sister-in-law had broken up with her high school boyfriend, her mother had immediately removed all photos and stopped mentioning him. But with her brother's ex, it was as if this woman had earned lifetime membership status in the family, complete with benefits and a permanent seat at every gathering. That conversation was the only thing that kept me sane for months. At least I knew I was not imagining the absolute strangeness of the dynamic. My sister-in-law admitted she had tried talking to her mother about it once. She had suggested that maybe it was time to move on. Her mother cried for 2 hours about how nobody understood her heart, how she loved the ex like a daughter, and how she could not simply turn those feelings off. My sister-in-law told her that yes, actually, you can turn those feelings off when your son marries someone else. Apparently, that conversation did not go well. I started documenting things. Every comment, every comparison, every surprise appearance. I kept a journal, which sounds paranoid, but I needed proof that this was actually happening. I needed something to show I was not losing my mind or being overly sensitive the way my husband sometimes suggested. The journal entries were damning. March 12th. Mother-in-law mentioned the ex 7 times during a 2-hour dinner. Compared my pot roast to the ex's pot roast unfavorably. Said the ex always knew to add more salt. April 3rd. Ex was at Easter dinner. Wore a pastel dress the same color as mine. Mother-in-law commented that the ex wore it better. The Thanksgiving incident was what finally broke me. I had spent 3 days preparing dishes for the family dinner. 3 entire days. I took time off work, I researched recipes, I made everything from scratch because I wanted to prove something. Looking back, I am not even sure what I was trying to prove. That I could cook, that I was worthy, that I deserved to be part of this family. I made my grandmother's famous sweet potato casserole. It was a recipe that had been passed down for 4 generations in my family. It was the dish everyone requested at every holiday. It was the dish that made my grandmother legendary in our family circles. The recipe was sacred to me. Sweet potatoes, mashed with butter and brown sugar, topped with a pecan streusel that crisped perfectly in the oven with just a hint of cinnamon and nutmeg that made the whole kitchen smell like autumn. My grandmother had taught me how to make it when I was 12 years old. She had written the recipe down for me in her shaky handwriting. She had told me this was our family's legacy. I had made it every Thanksgiving since she passed away, and people always said it tasted exactly like hers. It was the one dish I knew I could nail. The one thing I knew would be perfect. I arrived at my mother-in-law's house early to help set up, carrying my grandmother's casserole dish wrapped in towels to keep it warm. The house smelled amazing, like turkey and stuffing and every traditional Thanksgiving smell you can imagine. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw it. Another sweet potato casserole. Same dish, same pecan topping, sitting on the counter like it had every right to be there. The ex was standing next to it, smiling at my mother-in-law and accepting compliments on how beautiful it looked. I stood there in the doorway holding my casserole, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mother-in-law turned and saw me, and her face did this little thing. A quick flash of satisfaction before she arranged her features into false surprise. "Oh, Bryn, you brought sweet potato casserole too. What a funny coincidence. Well, I guess we'll have 2 to choose from." It was not a coincidence. She had asked the ex to bring that specific dish. She had given her my family recipe, the one my husband had seen me make dozens of times, the one he had raved about to his family. When it came time to serve dinner, my mother-in-law made a big show of tasting both casseroles. She took a forkful of mine and chewed slowly, her face neutral. Then she took a forkful of the ex's, and her entire face lit up as if she had just tasted heaven. "Oh my goodness, this is incredible. Everyone has to try this one." She held up the ex's casserole dish. "I think hers is better. Don't you all agree?" She asked this to the entire table. 23 people watched the humiliation unfold in real time. Some people looked uncomfortable and stayed silent. Others, the ones who had always taken my mother-in-law's side in everything, nodded enthusiastically and agreed that yes, the ex's version was superior, fluffier, better spice balance, perfect sweetness. My mother-in-law served the ex's casserole to everyone at the table, giving out generous portions and raving about every bite. My casserole sat on the side table untouched, like a monument to my inadequacy. I watched 23 people eat that woman's version of my grandmother's recipe, while mine sat there getting cold and congealed like a rejected science project at a school fair. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 15 minutes. Ugly crying. The kind where your mascara runs, your nose turns red, and you make those gasping sounds you hope nobody can hear through the door. When I came back, my husband was still sitting there, eating the ex's casserole, completely oblivious to the fact that his mother had just publicly humiliated his wife. He was laughing at something his uncle had said. He had a napkin tucked into his collar. He looked perfectly content with the world. That image is burned into my brain forever. Him eating that casserole, smiling, while I stood in the doorway with swollen eyes and a shattered heart. That was the moment I realized I could not do this anymore. I could not keep pretending this was normal. I could not keep being the understanding wife who smiled through the disrespect. I could not keep setting myself on fire to keep his family warm. Something had to change, or I had to leave. There was no middle ground left. No compromise that could make the situation tolerable. Either he stood up for me, or I walked. Simple as that. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. 12 weeks along, actually, which meant I had been pregnant during the Thanksgiving disaster and had not even known. I'd been so stressed by the family situation that I had barely noticed I had missed 2 periods. I had chalked it up to stress because stress does weird things to your body, and I had been chronically stressed for approximately 3 years straight. But then I started feeling nauseous in the mornings, and I could not stomach coffee anymore. For me, that is basically a sign of the apocalypse. So I took a test. Actually, I took 4 tests. All positive. 4 little windows with 2 lines. 4 pieces of plastic telling me I was growing a human. The doctor confirmed it with an ultrasound. I sat in that examination room, staring at the tiny blob on the screen, listening to the rapid whoosh of the heartbeat, and all I could think about was what kind of grandmother my mother-in-law would be. Would she compare my parenting to the ex's hypothetical parenting? Would she invite the ex to my baby's birthday parties? Would she show up at the hospital when I gave birth and ask if the ex could be in the delivery room too? The thought made me physically ill. More ill than the morning sickness already making me miserable. The technician printed ultrasound photos for me. Grainy black and white images where I could barely make out what was supposedly a baby. She smiled and said congratulations. She told me everything looked healthy and normal. She gave me pamphlets about prenatal vitamins and what to expect in the coming months. I thanked her and left the office. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes just staring at those ultrasound photos, trying to feel happy, trying to feel anything other than dread. I did not tell my husband right away. I needed time to think. I needed time to figure out what I was going to do. Could I bring a child into this family dynamic? Could I subject my child to growing up with a grandmother who valued an ex-girlfriend more than her own grandchild? Could I trust my husband to protect our child when he had failed to protect me for 3 solid years? These were not rhetorical questions. They were real concerns that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling this tiny person growing inside me, and wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. But fate, or maybe just terrible timing, forced my hand. My mother-in-law called 2 days after I found out about the pregnancy, using that fake, sweet voice she always used when she was about to do something awful. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm planning a little family dinner for this weekend. Nothing fancy, just close family. I'd love for you and my son to come." I could hear it in her voice before she even said it, that tiny note of guilty anticipation. Then she said it. "Oh, and I invited a few friends too, including, well, you know who. I hope that's okay. She's been going through a hard time lately, and I thought it would be nice to include her." Something inside me snapped. I told my husband about the pregnancy, right there in our kitchen. I just blurted it out without any of the cute announcement I had once imagined. "I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. And I'm done." He stared at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. "You're what?" "You're pregnant. That's amazing. That's incredible. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He moved to hug me, but I stepped back. His smile faltered. "What do you mean you're done?" I told him his mother had exactly one choice to make. She could have a relationship with her future grandchild, or she could continue her bizarre obsession with his ex-girlfriend, but she could not have both. I was drawing a line. If she crossed it, she would never meet this baby. Never. Not at the hospital, not at birthdays, not at holidays. If she wanted to keep playing house with his ex, she could do it without us, and without her grandchild. My husband started to say something about his mother meaning well, about her being attached to the past. I cut him off. My voice was shaking and I could feel tears starting, but I kept talking. "She humiliated me at Thanksgiving. She invited your ex to be a co-host at our engagement party. She tried to seat her at our wedding table. She compares me to her constantly, and you just sit there and let it happen. I have spent 3 years of my life being told I'm not good enough, and I am not doing it anymore. I am not raising a child in this environment." I told him if he did not support me on this, if he did not stand up to his mother right then and there, I would leave. I would pack my bags, take our unborn child, and leave. He could explain to everyone why his marriage fell apart. Maybe he could invite his ex to his divorce party. She could help pick out the decorations. I was serious, dead serious. He could see it in my face. He could hear it in my voice. This was not a bluff. This was not an ultimatum I would eventually back down from. This was happening one way or another. That seemed to wake him up. Something clicked in his brain. Some survival instinct finally overriding years of conditioning. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And I think for the first time in our marriage, he understood how close he was to losing everything. how close I was to walking out that door and never coming back. How serious I was about every word I had just said. He picked up his phone right there, right in front of me. He opened his contacts, found his ex's number, and blocked it. Just blocked it. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Then he called his mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheery.
"Hi, honey. Have you talked to Bryn about dinner? I'm making that roast you love so much."
He cut her off. "Mom, we need to talk. Bryn is pregnant, and you need to make a choice right now. Either you stop inviting my ex to family events and stop comparing Bryn to her, or you do not get to be part of this baby's life at all. No hospital visits, no birthdays, nothing." I could hear my mother-in-law's voice change through the phone, cheerful to shocked to defensive in about 3 seconds. "What? What are you talking about? I'm just trying to keep everyone included. I don't understand why you're being so unreasonable. She's like family to me." My husband's jaw tightened. "She is not family, Mom. She is my ex-girlfriend from over 5 years ago. Bryn is your daughter-in-law. Bryn is carrying your grandchild. If you cannot prioritize them over someone I used to date, then you have made your choice." My mother-in-law started crying. I could hear it through the phone, those dramatic sobs she had always used to manipulate situations in her favor. "How can you do this to me? How can you make me choose? I love you. I love you so much. I just want everyone to be happy. Why are you punishing me for caring too much?" My husband actually rolled his eyes. I had never seen him do that while talking to his mother. "I'm not punishing you. I'm setting a boundary. You have until the end of the week to decide." Then he hung up. He just hung up on his crying mother. That was something I had never witnessed in 3 years of marriage. We sat in silence for a long time. I wanted to feel relieved, but instead, I just felt exhausted. 3 years of this nonsense, and it had taken me threatening to leave and announcing a pregnancy for him to finally do something about it. Better late than never, I suppose. But the resentment was already there, sitting between us like a third person at the table. I appreciated what he had just done, but I could not forget the 3 years of inaction that came before it. The week passed with excruciating slowness. My mother-in-law did not call. She did not text. Nothing. Radio silence. I did not know whether she was punishing us with the silent treatment or actually taking time to think about her choice. My husband checked his phone obsessively, waiting for a message that never came. He tried to call her twice, but she did not answer. He left voicemails that went unreturned. I could see the worry and hurt on his face. I could see him struggling with the reality that his mother might actually choose his ex over him. When the deadline arrived, my father-in-law called instead. His voice was shaking when he told us his wife had made her choice. I put the phone on speaker so I could hear. "She chose her," my father-in-law said, his voice breaking. I tried to talk to her. I tried to make her see reason, but she said she couldn't abandon someone who needed her. She said the ex has been through so much and depends on her support. She said you two would be fine without her, but the ex wouldn't be. My husband asked his father to repeat it, as though he could not possibly have heard correctly. "Are you saying Mom chose my ex-girlfriend over her own grandchild?" His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was in shock. "That's what I'm saying," my father-in-law confirmed. "I'm so sorry, son. I tried. I really tried. I don't understand her reasoning. I don't understand any of this. But yes, she chose to maintain her relationship with your ex rather than be part of your child's life." My husband went pale. All the color drained from his face in an instant. He hung up the phone and just sat there on the couch, staring at nothing, his hands shaking slightly. I did not know what to say. What do you say when someone's mother chooses their ex over them? What do you say when she chooses a woman who has not been romantically involved with her son for more than 5 years over her own flesh and blood? I sat next to him and held his hand. We stayed like that for hours. He kept saying he could not believe it, that he could not understand how she could do this. I could believe it. I had seen it coming from a mile away. I had watched this train wreck build up speed for 3 years, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. Like confirmation that yes, it really was that bad. Yes, she really did value the ex more than her own son and future grandchild. Yes, we really had been fighting a losing battle the entire time. The insanity of it was almost impressive in its scope. We thought that was the end of it. We thought we could move forward, build our little family of 3, and leave the dysfunction behind us. We were wrong. So incredibly wrong. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law called again. This time, his voice was not just shaking. It was panicked. He was breathing hard like he had been running or was having an anxiety attack. "You need to sit down for this," he said. "Both of you need to sit down, right now." Then he told us the ex was pregnant, and she was claiming the baby was my husband's. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands went numb. My husband grabbed the phone and started shouting, his voice cracking with emotion. "What the hell are you talking about? I haven't seen or spoken to her in over 5 years. I've barely looked at her during those forced family dinners." My father-in-law said the ex had called his wife crying hysterically, saying she had been seeing my husband in secret for months. Now she was pregnant and did not know what to do. She claimed they had been having an affair, sneaking around, meeting up when I was not there. My mother-in-law had apparently believed her immediately. No questions, no proof, no timeline. And now she was demanding that my husband do the right thing and take responsibility for this supposed baby. She was demanding that he leave me, move in with the ex, and be a father to the ex's child. I started laughing, not because it was funny, because the alternatives were screaming breaking things or completely falling apart. My husband had not touched that woman in over 5 years. He had barely looked at her during the forced family dinners. During those horrible Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, he had actively avoided her. He sat as far away as possible. He kept conversations brief and superficial. The idea that they had been having some secret affair was so ridiculous it would have been hilarious if it had not been so devastating, if it had not been threatening to destroy everything. When I managed to ask, my voice was shaky. "When does she claim this happened?" My father-in-law said the ex was being vague about details. She was just saying it had been going on for months, that they had been meeting whenever they could find time. My husband was pacing now, running his hands through his hair, his face red with anger and panic. "That's impossible. That is completely impossible. I'm never alone. I'm either at work with Bryn or with friends. When exactly was I supposed to be having this affair?" We spent the next 2 days building our case. Not 2 hours. 2 full days of gathering every piece of evidence we could find. My husband took time off work. I called in sick. We treated it like the investigation it was, because our entire marriage was on trial based on a lie. Day 1, we focused on digital evidence. Every calendar entry from the past year cross-referenced with his work schedule. His Google Maps timeline showing every place his phone had been. Text messages, emails, anything that showed where he was and who he was with. We found his gym membership records, showing badge swipes every Monday and Thursday morning at 6. We found his office building security logs going back 90 days, showing exactly when he entered and left each day. Day 2, we tackled finances and witnesses. Credit card statements going back 18 months, printed and highlighted. Every charge accounted for, from our regular grocery store, to the gas station near our house, to restaurants we had gone to together. We called friends, co-workers, his gym trainer, anyone who could verify his whereabouts and routine. His best friend confirmed their Wednesday evening basketball games. His coworker confirmed their Friday lunches. Every piece fit together perfectly. No gaps, no mysteries, no unexplained absences. My sister came over on day 2 with her professional camera. She spent hours photographing every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. She interviewed my husband like a lawyer deposing a witness, asking detailed questions about his schedule, his habits, and his interactions with the ex at family events. She created a digital folder, backed everything up in 3 places, and organized it all by date and category. By the time she was done, we had a case file that would make a prosecutor jealous. I called the ex's number, which my husband had unblocked for this specific purpose. My hands were shaking as I dialed. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice soft and hesitant. "Hello." I did not waste time with pleasantries. "This is Bryn. You have 24 hours to provide a dated ultrasound and agree to a paternity test done at a facility of our choosing. or we will take legal action for defamation, slander, and emotional distress. Do you understand?" There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Then she hung up. Just hung up without saying a word. My mother-in-law called immediately after, literally within 30 seconds, which told me the ex had her on speed dial. She was screaming. Actually screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "How dare you harass a pregnant woman? How dare you threaten her? She's vulnerable and scared, and you're being cruel and heartless. What kind of person are you?" I told her the only heartless person in this situation was her, and if she wanted proof, she could look in the mirror. I told her maybe she should ask herself why she was so quick to believe a woman she barely knew over her own son. Why she was willing to destroy her relationship with her son based on absolutely zero evidence. What kind of mother does that? My husband took the phone from me before I could say something I would really regret. He told his mother that unless she could provide concrete evidence of this supposed affair, actual proof, beyond the word of a woman who had every reason to lie, she needed to stop calling us, stop harassing us, and stop believing every dramatic claim without bothering to verify it. She started crying, those same manipulative sobs she always used. "My son has changed. You've poisoned him against his own family. He never used to talk to me like this. What have you done to him?" He told her she had destroyed their relationship all on her own. If there was any poison involved, she was the one who had been spreading it for 3 years. 3 years of comparisons. 3 years of disrespect. 3 years of prioritizing his ex over his wife. This was not sudden. This had been building for a long time. She had ignored every warning sign, every attempt at a boundary, every hint that her behavior was unacceptable. Then he hung up. Actually hung up on his crying mother for the second time in 2 weeks. The next day, my mother-in-law started posting on social media. Vague posts about betrayal and disappointment, about how children grow up and forget their parents, about how some people show their true colors when things get difficult, about how grandparents' rights matter too, about how she was being punished for loving too much. The posts were carefully crafted to make her look like a victim without providing any actual context. Her friends commented with supportive messages, dozens of them. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. You deserve better. Family should stick together. I can't believe they're treating you this way. Praying for you." None of them knew the full story, of course. They only knew her version, which painted her as a doting mother being cruelly cut off by her ungrateful son and evil daughter-in-law. She was spinning a narrative, building a support system, preparing for war. My husband's extended family started taking sides based on those posts. His aunt called to tell him he should be ashamed of himself. She said his mother had always been nothing but loving and supportive, and we were breaking her heart. His uncle sent a long text message about family loyalty and responsibility, about how you do not abandon your mother over minor disagreements. His cousins unfriended me on social media, blocked me, and started liking and sharing my mother-in-law's posts, with comments about how sad it is when families fall apart. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. The family fractured and divided based on my mother-in-law's carefully crafted narrative. She was good at this. She had probably been doing this kind of manipulation for decades. Only a handful of relatives reached out to ask for our side of the story. My husband's uncle on the other side of the family called and said something did not add up. He had noticed the strange dynamic with the ex at family gatherings and had always thought it was weird. My husband's cousin, who was more like a sister to him, called, crying, and said she believed us. She had seen firsthand how my mother-in-law treated me, but the rest just assumed we were the problem. They assumed we were cruel for cutting off this poor, loving mother who only wanted to be part of her grandchild's life. They did not know about the 3 years of comparisons. They did not know about the Thanksgiving humiliation. They did not know about the wedding seating debacle or the constant presence of the ex at every gathering. They only knew what my mother-in-law told them, and she told them we were the villains in this story. My father-in-law called 4 days later. His voice was different this time, flat, exhausted, defeated. He sounded like he had aged 20 years in a week. "I need to come over and talk to you both in person. This can't be a phone conversation. Can I come over now?" We said yes. He showed up 30 minutes later. When he arrived, he looked terrible. Bags under his eyes, unshaven, clothes wrinkled like he had slept in them. He looked like he had been through hell. He sat down at our kitchen table and asked for a glass of water. His hands were shaking as he drank it. Then he told us he had been doing some investigating of his own. He said something had felt wrong from the beginning, from that very first phone call about the ex being pregnant. His wife had been too nervous, too insistent, too eager to believe the worst about their son. It did not sit right with him. He knew his wife could be difficult and controlling, but this seemed extreme even for her. So he started going through their finances, bank statements from accounts his wife did not know he had access to, joint accounts that sent him monthly statements by email, statements she thought he never looked at. And he found withdrawals, hundreds of them over the past 3 years. Small amounts mostly, $20 or $30 here and there, never enough to be immediately noticeable, but sometimes larger amounts. $100, $200. They added up. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, all withdrawn in cash over the course of 3 years. Impossible to trace to specific purchases. When he confronted his wife about the money, showing her printed statements with the withdrawals highlighted, she tried to lie at first. She said it was for groceries and personal expenses. But he had done the math. The amount was far beyond what anyone would need for reasonable personal expenses, especially when their regular bills and groceries were already paid from the same account by debit card. He pressed her. He told her he was not stupid. He told her he knew something was going on and she needed to come clean. She broke down completely. Not the fake crying she did for manipulation. Real crying. The kind where you cannot breathe properly and your whole body shakes. She confessed everything. Through sobs, she admitted that yes, the withdrawals had been going to the ex. Monthly payments, sometimes weekly. Funding her rent, her car payments, her utilities, her life. My mother-in-law had been secretly supporting her for years, paying her bills, buying her groceries, keeping her financially dependent and emotionally close, keeping her available. When my mother-in-law found out I was pregnant, when the ultimatum forced her to face reality, she panicked. My pregnancy meant her son's marriage was real, permanent, producing a child. The ex was being pushed out of the picture, and my mother-in-law's fantasy of getting them back together was dying. So she called the ex that same night and suggested something drastic. My father-in-law's voice shook as he explained what he had discovered. After confronting his wife about the withdrawals, she had broken down and confessed everything. The payments to the ex, the constant updates about our lives, and worst of all, the fake pregnancy scheme. He had demanded to see proof, and in her panicked state, she unlocked her phone to show him one message, thinking it would help her case. Instead, he took the phone and found hundreds more. My father-in-law pulled out his phone and showed us screenshots of text messages between his wife and the ex. Messages going back months. They discussed the plan in detail. They discussed timing. They discussed how to make it believable. They discussed what to say and when to say it. My mother-in-law had even offered to pay for fake ultrasound images if needed. She told the ex that once my husband left me, they could all be a family again, the way it was supposed to be. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. My husband got up and walked out of the room. I heard him in the bathroom, and I am pretty sure he was vomiting. My father-in-law sat there with tears in his eyes, apologizing over and over. He said he had never imagined his wife was capable of something like this. He said he thought she was just overly attached, maybe a bit delusional, but not malicious. Not cruel. But this was cruel. This was calculated and deliberate. This was designed to destroy our marriage and hurt their own grandchild in the process. The ex sent an email the next morning, a long rambling confession about how she was not pregnant and had never been pregnant. She admitted she had agreed to the plan because she was desperate to get my husband back, and my mother-in-law had convinced her it would work. She said she was sorry. She said she knew it was wrong. But she had been so lonely, and my mother-in-law had been so persuasive. She made herself sound like a victim, like she had been manipulated too. Maybe she had been. But she had also been a willing participant in a scheme to destroy my family. My husband forwarded the email to every single family member, every aunt, every uncle, every cousin, every grandparent. He added a message explaining the entire situation, the timeline we had constructed, the bank statements his father had found, the text messages between his mother and the ex. He laid it all out in excruciating detail. Then he blocked anyone who tried to defend his mother or minimize what she had done. His aunt, who had called him shameful, blocked. His uncle, who had lectured him about family loyalty, blocked. His cousins, who had unfriended me, blocked. Within hours, people started calling. Some called to apologize. Some called to express shock and disbelief. Some said they had always thought his mother was a bit odd, but had never imagined this level of dysfunction. A few family members doubled down. They insisted we must have done something to push his mother to such extremes. They said family should forgive family. Those people got blocked too. My husband was done. Completely done. And honestly, so was I. My father-in-law told us he was leaving his wife. He said he could not stay married to someone who would do this to their own child. Someone who would try to destroy their son's marriage and lie about their future grandchild. He said he had been making excuses for her behavior for decades. But this was beyond excuse, beyond forgiveness. He packed his things and moved into a hotel that same week. Within the month, he had filed for divorce. My mother-in-law hired a lawyer and threatened to sue us for defamation. She claimed we had damaged her reputation by sharing private information without her consent. Our lawyer sent her a letter explaining that truth is an absolute defense against defamation. And if she wanted to pursue legal action, we had hundreds of pages of evidence we would be happy to present in court. We also had grounds for a countersuit for emotional distress harassment and attempted fraud. She dropped the threat immediately. The ex moved out of state within 2 weeks. She packed up and left. She could not handle the fallout or the public shame. Apparently, several people had contacted her directly after my husband forwarded her confession email. Some expressed disappointment. Some expressed anger. Some just wanted to know why she had done it. She changed her phone number, deleted her social media accounts, and disappeared. I heard through the grapevine that she moved somewhere in the Pacific Northwest and started over with a new job and new friends and knew nothing about the disaster. Good riddance to her and her desperate attempt to recapture a relationship that had ended more than 5 years earlier. At my 16-week checkup, my doctor noticed my blood pressure was dangerously high, 160/95, well into the hypertensive range, and especially dangerous during pregnancy. She asked about my stress levels, and I laughed. I actually laughed out loud in the examination room. This slightly hysterical sound that made the nurse look concerned. Stress levels. Where did I even begin? Should I start with the mother-in-law who chose my husband's ex over her own grandchild? Or jump straight to the conspiracy to fake a pregnancy and destroy my marriage? Or maybe discuss the family members who believed I was some kind of manipulative villain who had poisoned my husband against his poor, innocent mother? My doctor looked at my chart, then looked at me with genuine concern in her eyes. She told me in no uncertain terms that I needed to be on bed rest immediately. Complete bed rest. No work, no stress, nothing that could spike my blood pressure further. She said if my blood pressure stayed that high, I was at serious risk for preeclampsia, which could be life-threatening for both me and the baby. She wanted me horizontal as much as possible, only getting up for bathroom breaks and gentle walks around the house once a day. No cooking, no cleaning, no answering stressful phone calls. My only job was to stay calm and let the baby grow. My husband took a full week off work to take care of me. He used all his vacation days without hesitation. He cooked every meal, he handled all the cleaning, he did laundry, he managed the ongoing family drama, he screened phone calls and responded to emails. He set up the bedroom like a recovery suite. He brought in a mini fridge so I could have snacks and water within reach. He set up my laptop on a bed tray so I could watch shows. He brought me books from the library about pregnancy and parenting. He brought me 3 meals a day on a tray. He helped me to the bathroom when I needed it. He read to me when I got bored with television. It was the most present he had been in our entire marriage, and it had only taken a complete emotional apocalypse and a medical emergency to get us there. I did not know whether to be grateful that he was finally stepping up, or furious that it had taken this long, that it had taken my health being at risk. I settled on both. I could hold 2 emotions at once. I could appreciate what he was doing now, while still remembering the 3 years he had stood by and watched his mother tear me down. Both things could be true at the same time. We started therapy during my bed rest, individual sessions and couple sessions all done by video call from the bedroom, because I could not leave the house. My therapist specialized in family trauma and narcissistic personality disorders. She listened to my story with increasingly wide eyes. She made notes. Lots of notes. At one point, she actually said, "This is one of the more extreme cases of mother-son enmeshment I've encountered." She told me what I already knew deep down. My mother-in-law's behavior was abusive. It had been abusive for years. My husband had been conditioned since childhood to accept it and enable it. She explained concepts like emotional incest, where a parent treats a child as an emotional spouse, making the child responsible for the parent's happiness and emotional regulation. She explained triangulation, where my mother-in-law had inserted the ex into our relationship to create conflict and maintain control. She explained love bombing and intermittent reinforcement patterns my mother-in-law had used to keep both my husband and the ex dependent on her approval. She said the fact that my husband had finally stood up to her was a huge step, possibly the biggest step he had ever taken in his life. But we had years of patterns to unlearn and repair. My husband's therapist was a man who specialized in helping people recover from manipulative family systems. He said similar things. He talked about enmeshment, toxic family dynamics, learned helplessness, and the fog of fear, obligation and guilt that keeps people trapped in unhealthy relationships. He helped my husband understand that his mother's love had always come with conditions, that she had raised him to prioritize her feelings over his own, over anyone's, that his sense of normal had been calibrated wrong since childhood, that what he had been taught was love was actually control dressed up as maternal instinct. He started to see how deep the damage went, how many of his behaviors and reactions were rooted in a childhood spent managing his mother's emotions, instead of developing his own. He had been trained to read her moods, anticipate her needs, and prevent her distress at all costs. He had learned that his own feelings did not matter, that setting boundaries was selfish, that saying no was betrayal. His therapist told him, "This conditioning runs so deep that it feels like truth. It feels like love. It feels like what family is supposed to be. Breaking free from it requires essentially rewiring your entire understanding of relationships." In couples therapy, we talked about trust. We talked about how I had been asking him for 3 years to set boundaries, and he had only done it when I threatened to leave. We talked about how that had damaged my faith in him, in us, in our future together. We talked about how I had been fighting this battle alone while he sat on the sidelines making excuses. He cried, actual tears. Something I had rarely seen from him. He apologized. He said he understood why I'd felt abandoned, why I'd felt betrayed by his inaction. His therapist had him write a letter to his mother, not to send, just to process his feelings. He wrote 23 pages. 23 pages of anger and hurt and confusion and grief. He read parts of it to me, and I cried listening to him finally articulate what he had been feeling all those years. The guilt, the obligation, the fear of disappointing her, the desperate need for her approval. It was heartbreaking. Then he wrote a second letter. This one was meant to be sent. It was 2 pages long and laid out clear boundaries. No contact for at least 6 months. Mandatory therapy for her during that time, with proof of attendance. A genuine apology. Not to him, to me. An apology that acknowledged what she had done and the harm she had caused. And even then, he said he was not promising forgiveness or reconciliation. He was only promising to consider the possibility. Her response came 3 days later. 7 pages of justification and blame. She admitted to nothing. She said she had only been trying to protect her son from making a mistake. She said she had always known I was not right for him. She said the ex was the better choice. She said I had manipulated him, turned him against her, and poisoned him with my bitterness. She said she had done nothing wrong, and she certainly was not going to apologize for loving her son too much. We updated every legal document we had: medical power of attorney, emergency contacts, life insurance beneficiaries, will and testament. We removed my mother-in-law from everything and replaced her with my father-in-law and my sister. We consulted with a lawyer about grandparents' rights in our state. We documented everything, every text message, every voicemail, every piece of evidence we might need if she tried to sue for visitation later. She showed up at our house twice. The first time my husband answered the door and told her to leave. She refused. She said she had a right to see her son, a right to talk to him. He told her if she did not leave immediately, he would call the police. She started crying, making a scene on our front porch. The neighbors came out to watch. My husband called the police anyway. They asked her to leave, and she did, but not before shouting at him that he would regret this. That family was forever. That I had destroyed everything. The second time, we were not home. She tried to get in through the back door. She actually attempted to break the lock. Our security camera caught everything. We took the footage to the police and filed for a restraining order. The judge granted it immediately after seeing the footage and reading our documentation of harassment. My mother-in-law was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from our property and have no contact with either of us. My blood pressure slowly returned to normal. The bed rest helped. So did the therapy. So did finally having some peace and distance from the chaos. By my 20th week, my doctor cleared me to resume normal activities, though she warned me to avoid stress as much as possible. I almost laughed. Avoid stress. Sure, I would just avoid my entire life for the next 20 weeks. We decided to do a small gender reveal party. Just the people who had supported us through everything. My father-in-law, my sister, my best friend from college, my husband's best friend who had been horrified by the whole situation. 11 people total. We ordered a cake, the kind where the inside reveals the gender when you cut it. My husband and I cut it together. The inside was pink. A girl. We were having a daughter. Everyone cheered and congratulated us. But I felt this strange mix of joy and terror. Joy, because I had wanted a daughter. Terror, because now I had to figure out how to raise her in the aftermath of all this. How to protect her from the kind of toxic love that had damaged her father. My husband squeezed my hand and whispered that we would figure it out together. That we would do better than his parents did. I hoped he was right. My father-in-law started coming around more often. Not to mediate. Not to push reconciliation. Just to be there. To be a grandfather. He brought baby gifts. He helped set up the nursery. He asked questions about our birth plan. He was genuinely trying to build a relationship with us separate from his wife. It was strange at first seeing him without her, but it was also nice. He was different when she was not around. Calmer. Funnier. More present. The divorce proceedings were apparently brutal. My mother-in-law fought for everything. She tried to claim she deserved half of assets she had not contributed to. She hired an expensive lawyer to drag things out. My father-in-law's lawyer presented the bank statements showing the secret withdrawals to the ex as evidence of financial misconduct. The judge was not impressed with my mother-in-law's explanations. She ended up with far less than she had hoped for in the settlement. Word reached us through family members that she was court-ordered to attend therapy as part of the divorce proceedings. Apparently, my father-in-law had documented years of emotional manipulation and control, and the judge had concerns about her mental health. She was supposedly going, but according to the family grapevine, she spent most sessions talking about how everyone had betrayed her. Her therapist was reportedly earning every penny. I went into labor at 38 weeks, right on schedule. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and the contractions hit like a freight train. My husband panicked. He could not find the hospital bag we had packed weeks earlier. He ran around the house grabbing random items, and I had to tell him 3 times that yes, the bag was in the closet exactly where I had told him it was. Men. Even in a crisis, they cannot find things right in front of them. Labor lasted 14 hours. 14 long, painful hours of contractions and breathing exercises with my husband trying to be supportive while also looking like he might pass out. The nurses kept offering him a chair and asking if he needed water. I told them to focus on me. I was the one actually pushing a human out of my body. He held my hand through all of it, though. He never left my side. He whispered encouragement even when I told him to shut up. Our daughter was born at 4:17 in the afternoon, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces. She had her father's nose and my eyes, a shocking amount of dark hair, and the loudest cry I had ever heard. The nurses cleaned her up and placed her on my chest. I looked at this tiny person and felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of keeping her safe, keeping her healthy, keeping her away from the kind of toxicity that had defined our family for too long. My husband cried when he held her. Real tears. Not the polite moisture he had shown in therapy. He kept saying she was perfect. She's so perfect. He could not believe she was ours. I watched him with our daughter and saw something shift in his face. This was real now. We were not just fighting for our marriage anymore. We were fighting for her childhood, for her right to grow up without manipulation and conditional love. The first few months were a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and figuring out how to be parents. My father-in-law visited often, always calling first, always respecting our space and boundaries. He was a surprisingly good grandfather, patient and gentle with our daughter. He told us once that he wished he had been more present when my husband was young. that maybe things would have been different if he had stood up to his wife sooner. Better late than never, I suppose. We heard through the grapevine that my mother-in-law was still in therapy, still insisting she had done nothing wrong. A few family members who had initially supported her eventually came around after seeing the evidence we had shared, and after hearing multiple sides of the story. Some sent apology messages. We accepted a few, mostly from people who had been genuinely misled rather than actively malicious. Others remained blocked. Forgiveness has limits. My sister-in-law, who had always been on our side, told us that their mother had tried to show up at her house once demanding information about the baby. My sister-in-law threatened to call the police and reminded her about the restraining order, which, while specific to our house, demonstrated a pattern of harassment. My mother-in-law left, but apparently sent a series of text messages calling her own daughter a traitor. My sister-in-law blocked her after that. Our daughter is 6 months old now. She is healthy and happy. She is hitting all her milestones. She smiles when she sees her grandfather. She reaches for her father when he comes home from work. She falls asleep on my chest during late-night feedings. Our marriage is stronger than it was before, though that is a low bar considering how close we came to divorce. We still go to therapy. We still work on communication. We still navigate the aftermath of those 3 years of toxicity. My mother-in-law remains court-ordered in therapy, though reports suggest she has made minimal progress. She is not allowed contact with us, and we have no intention of lifting that restriction anytime soon. Some relatives have quietly resumed contact with her, and we have accepted that we cannot control what other people do. We can only control our own boundaries and our own family. Several family members remain permanently blocked. Their choice to defend her manipulation mattered more to them than having a relationship with us. My husband is different now, more assertive, more present, more willing to prioritize our little family over his extended one. He is in year 2 of therapy and finally starting to unpack decades of conditioning and guilt. He is learning that setting boundaries does not make him a bad son, that protecting his wife and daughter does not make him disloyal. It is hard work, and some days are better than others, but he is trying. That is more than he did for the first 3 years of our marriage. I look at our daughter sometimes and think about the grandmother she will never know. Part of me feels sad about that. Sad about the relationship that could have existed if my mother-in-law had been capable of healthy love. But mostly, I feel relieved. Relieved that our daughter will not grow up being compared to some idealized version of someone else. Relieved that she will not learn to accept manipulation as love. Relieved that we broke the cycle before it could touch her. The peace we have now is worth everything we lost. The family members who chose sides against us. The holidays spent with just the 2 of us. The complicated explanations we will eventually have to give our daughter about why she does not have a grandmother on her father's side. All of it is worth the peace. Worth the knowledge that we are building something healthier, something better, something that does not require us to set ourselves on fire to keep other people warm. Some family is worth fighting for. Some family is worth fighting against. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is recognize the difference and act accordingly. We chose our daughter. We chose each other. We chose peace over approval. And I do not regret it for a single second. This is where we are now. A small family of 3, plus one grandfather who is trying to make amends. Living quietly in a house with a restraining order filed against someone who should have loved us unconditionally, but loved control more. It is not the fairy tale ending anyone hopes for, but it is real, and it is ours. We are building something genuine from the ashes of something toxic. Some days I am angry about the 3 years we wasted trying to make it work. Other days I am grateful we figured it out before our daughter was old enough to remember the chaos. My husband says he cannot imagine going back to who he was before. He cannot imagine allowing his mother's manipulation to continue. He cannot imagine choosing her feelings over our family's well-being. That is growth. That is therapy working. That is what happens when someone finally decides to break free from a lifetime of conditioning. It is messy. It is painful. It requires constant vigilance, but it is worth it. We are worth it. Our daughter is worth it. And that is my story. A mother-in-law who loved an ex-girlfriend more than her own future grandchild. A conspiracy to fake a pregnancy and destroy a marriage. A family fractured by lies and manipulation. And through it all, Two people who decided to choose each other and their child over the dysfunction that tried to consume them. It is not pretty, and it is not over, but we are still here, still standing, still building something better.